Now, we've been having a lot of stories and conversations about healthcare in the country, and we've been seeing a number of things, a number of concerns in regards to, for instance, the NHIF, KNH. But there's still another aspect of this that comes into play, that is the insurance aspect of it, which is partly touched on by NHIF. And the insurance here being not only the NHIF covered, but that with the insurance companies, the other private firms, not the government-owned ones. And we've seen people going to hospitals and having their situations being sorted out pretty well because of having insurance. However, we've also heard of various concerns and harrowing stories about the experiences with various insurers and hospitals as well. And so we have a lot of finger pointing sometimes at who is the person who's dropping the ball in all this conversation. And we're inviting you to give us your views and your experiences with your insurance cover, that is if you're covered, or why you're not covered, that is if you're not, on our Twitter handle, that's at NTV Kenya. Use the hashtag NTV Today, as well as our Facebook page, NTV Kenya. And we shall sample some of these and have some of my guests in studio to respond to this. And now to help us dig deeper into this, I'm joined first and foremost by Tony Watima, who's an economist. He's not new to the show, and he's going to be helping us just get the perspective of this whole conversation. He also is a columnist for the Business Daily. And we also have Japheth Ogalo, the head of business development medical for Jubilee Insurance, joining us. And we have Dr. Abdi Mohammed, who is the Chief Operations Officer of Metro Hospital, but is also the chairman of the Kenya Association of Private Hospitals. And I feel that this is going to be a pretty good conversation, gentlemen. Just thinking about this, usually you have people pointing the finger at the insurer, sometimes it's the hospital. So at least we'll have both of you try and tell us who is to blame for this. And first and foremost, maybe I'll begin with you, Ogalo. Do we feel that enough, rather, what's the percentage of Kenyans that are covered by who are actually insured? And is it enough, or where should we be going?
Thank you, Dan. Insurance penetration, that is all classes of business, stands at a misery less than 3% in Kenya. With specific reference to medical, we have about 7.5 million Kenyans covered. So I'm looking at private insurers, which is about 1.2 million. I'm looking at NHIF, which also offers insurance, about 6.5 million lives. So if you add that, that is about 7.8. Looked at against a population of 40 million, that would say is below. It's below.
So that means without the government, for you as private insurers, how many people are those?
1.2 million lives.
1.2 million.
Yes.
And some of these are because people are employed. So I joined the Nation Media Group, and by default I had to be on a medical plan, and that was what has helped.
Yes, majority of course is employer groups, where it comes as a benefit to the employee or staff who is by virtue of employment, and that extends to their dependents, families and children. Then we have individuals, like families just coming in to buy insurance. Like in Jubilee, we have options and policies that cover families and individuals. So you walk in as yourself, Dan, you take a cover for yourself and family. Yeah.
All right. And now let's just get into some of the conversations that we see people having, be it online or even in person, or you go to a hospital and you find somebody who's stranded and frustrated. And these are people usually with medical cover. So I'll come to you as the hospitals first and foremost. There's a wide accusation that with the moment you guys see that I have a card, I think I'm going to be charged even for the floor that I walk on. Is it a true allegation, and why is it that way, that when the moment you see that I'm covered by insurance, you decide you'll do all the tests? And I just had a cough, but I'll even do, a CT scan.
Thank you very much. I think it's not true. The fact of the matter is most of the time what is done is because you really require those tests. And if you don't require, then there is no facility that would go out of its way to do unnecessary tests. I would say that for one reason, because when you send those claims, the insurances will look at, will go through, and they will reject. If they find that whatever that was done was unnecessary, it will be returned. And it will never be honored. So there's no chance there's a facility that wants to lose money when they know that if you do the wrong thing, the insurances will not be able to pay. So most of the time, I would say we are moving into defensive medicine, which has really been a problem in the West, whereby you come, I try to make sure I cover literally everything, because I don't want you to sue me tomorrow, especially if you are card holding. You would say, was money a problem? Why didn't you do X? Why didn't you do Y? Why didn't you do Z?
But is that the defense you use? Because at times it seems like because you don't want that to be the case, you're going to subject me to so many tests, yet I may not need them.
That's why I'm telling you, if it's unnecessary, I assure you the insurances will reject. When that claim goes to them, they will say, this one we are not paying, this one we are not paying. So basically, there's no way I would want to risk doing certain things which I know will not be honored tomorrow when I take my claims.
Right. Do the insurers agree with this? You know, because you find sometimes it's a back and forth. At times the hospital can write, the hospital might write the recommendation of what the treatment they want to give the patient. Yeah. But then after that, you find that the insurer may not have 100% ability to know whether that's what the patient actually needs, because based on what the doctor has written. Do you guys as insurers agree with that these guys always give, the hospitals always give something that is uncompromised?
Partly agree with my colleague here, but the whole essence of it is that we have situations where we feel that you know, because a patient is on a health insurance, then there is more test or more prescriptions, which drives to, you know, financial gain more than health gain. And this is exacerbated more so when you have a card. So it's more seen like it's a credit card that is to be utilized. But I think for me, the broader picture would be if, you know, we have a regulation that governs, especially the cost element, because that is a factor that is also affecting the penetration of health insurance. So because when the claims are high, the import of that is that the premiums become high and becomes out of reach of many ordinary Kenyans. So if we have stricter regulation, especially on the charges for cash paying and insurance paying, which should be the same anyway, because there shouldn't be variance when I'm paying cash and when I'm using my insurance card.
Because what happens a number of times is that you'll find, I will go to the hospital, I'll show my card, and I'll be told you need to do all the tests ABC up to Z. Then you find I'm going to be given medicines A1 to Z5. But then if I call a personal doctor, they tell me, no, just come and take, they'll probably just give me one medicine, one prescription, and it's good to go. So where's the lapse?
I wouldn't say there's a lapse, as I have told you, because insurances have employed doctors and nurses and clinical officers as part of the people who go through the claims to verify what was done. The thing that I talked about was where a doctor feels you need a little bit more to cover in case you don't miss. So when your colleague or your friend says, just take one, he's more scared of your pocket than doing the right thing. And that's what he was talking about. What are the guidelines in terms of treatment plans for each condition, in such a way that if you come with X, we would say these are the tests commonly that should be done, and these are the things that should not be done. That is, to me, is the most important thing. As for the prices, the medical board has tried, but you see the insurances are still not happy with the fee guidelines that the medical board has given because they feel it's a little bit too high or that it's out of reach for most people. So we are in a position where you are not sure which one works best for the patient.
Tony, do you have a comment on this? Because I've been seeing you looking at them talking and you just keep nodding.
No, I have no comment. So mine is the economics bit of it.
Yeah. Okay, but are you like yourself? Are you insured?
Yes.
Have you had any trouble? You don't have to mention your insurer, but have you had any trouble, any kind of cases where you found yourself in a bit of a fix when it comes to when you're going to hospital?
Not really.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the fix usually happens in the sense that you have a card, but you don't know what your policy says. That is a big challenge that we have. You will find that someone will come, but there are certain exclusion criteria, there are limits to your cover, which sometimes patients are not aware. So they assume that you walk in anytime you are sick and you will get treated. But they have not read the policy. So as a hospital, we know now those things. When you come to us and we tell you we can't do X, you have to pay for it, then the patient feels offended and says, I have a card, what do you mean? But it means that they have never looked at the policy.
But which we are going to come to in just a bit, because there's a whole cloud of lack of information between the insurer and the user. But you find also the medication, it feels like at times we are prescribed for the most expensive medication. Or is it that pharmacists are actually making a killing out of, you know, the whole arrangement?
No, the medication is mainly for the diseases that you have, and that is the thing. There is no doctor who will prescribe any medication that you don't need. So once it happens that you have been given a prescription, it just means there is a range of prices. So you will have the original drug, then you will have the generic. Even the generic, you will have different prices. So it just depends on what type of drugs that you are given. Were you given the original, or were you given a lower? It's like the computers or the phones. You can buy iPhone or you can buy Oppo. They will all serve the same purpose. So basically, what the doctor gives you, it just depends on what you will be given from the dispensing. That's now what determines the cost.
And for you who usually pay for these medicines, for instance, on behalf of your clients, do you feel that medication is highly priced? Because I think the last time I checked, you know, from bills, the hospital bills, on average, 40% of the bill is medication.
Actually, it's 48%. The claim cost that we pay, 48% of that is pharmacy cost. And I want just to go back to what Doc is saying here, that, you know, the drug that they dispense. And this is something that I think we need to pick up as an industry, because in the West and most countries, you know, developed countries, the first line of treatment is not necessarily branded drugs. Actually, it goes to the ratio of 20-80%. So they start you off with branded generics, then scale up depending on how the patient is progressing. In our country, in our case, it is the reverse. So Doc here starts with branded. 80% of what we dispense is branded. Then 20 is, you know, the branded generics. And they have the same composition. I think you'll agree with me that for the difference is just the...
Do you agree with him?
No, they are the same component.
Yes.
And what you need to understand is the 3% of Kenyans who are with insurance, they employed the top-notch guys who will come and say...
So who can afford the expensive medicine?
No, they are the ones actually who understand, and they will tell you when you give a certain drug, there are some who will literally walk away. They will say, I don't want this one, I want the original augmentin. So when you tell them it works the same way, they will tell you, no, is it your money for you to decide for me what to dispense? So sometimes also the providers are in a fix. They don't know which is the way. So there is a lot of patient education that needs to go through across, so that they understand when you are given that insurance card, it doesn't mean you misuse it as an individual. You don't just walk in anytime you feel like, I have a card. Employer is paying, it's none of my business. So even the things that you can do, home remedies, simple things, you straight walk away to the hospital and say, I need to be seen. Even sometimes going through the inconveniences of waiting in the queue for 1 hour, 2 hours.
Right.
So it's a whole education that needs to go across from providers to the insurance and to the clients. Need to understand and know what's going on.
Okay, we shall pick that up again, and I just want to now bring to the aspect of information between the insurer and the insured. There's a lot of misinformation. People don't understand their policies. People don't, even some of the words you're using here, possibly some people may not understand. You know, when you talk about the underwriter, the the policy holder, it's a lot of jargon sometimes, and at times I think insurance has the greatest display of faith because people just come and say, I believe so. Not all of us read all those terms and conditions. And you find this becomes one of the reasons where you have people getting stuck in hospital. Someone went and they got stuck because they did not know that their cover was actually over, because when they went for procedure ABC, they didn't, it was actually being cut out of this allowance. Is it that you guys are deliberately not giving as much information as you should because it works for your money?
Well, let me just say that insurance has evolved over time from the days where, we had the rule book and, only the underwriter, the one you mentioned, only knew the content of...
Maybe you should say who is the underwriter. So for the viewer who does not understand the underwriter, because this is the communication I'm talking about, that use big words, then I just accept and move on.
So the underwriter is the person who assesses the risk, working in an insurance company, assess and accept that risk and say, we will accept this risk and this is the premium that we'll charge for it. So what I was saying is that insurance has evolved to, where we were so transactional and where we kept one rule book that, it is black and white and nothing outside that. What we've been doing lately, and in line with IRA guidelines of treating customer fairly, is to break down the terms of the policy, communicate that to the policyholders, the beneficiaries of the cover, so that they know the rules, the guidelines of the cover, the scope, what is covered, what is out of scope, what are my limits, how do I access my cover, and all that information. At Jubilee, this is part of our, deliverable, contractual obligation with our clients. So when we sign up a new client, of course, within the month of cover, we have to have a session where we meet all the, the beneficiaries and take them through in a language that they understand, because that is what IRA also expects us to do. Break down, stop the insurance jargon, break it down to a common man's understanding.
Even here at NTV, we expect you to do that.
Yeah. So just
finish.
So and how we're doing that, besides just the education sessions we have with our members, we are now enabling our members through self support. We're using technology, so that if you're a member of Jubilee, you log into, we give you, we have a portal you log in, so you get information pertaining to your cover, in a summarized, well version that a layman would understand. So it tells you what is covered, what is in scope, what is out of scope, how do I access my cover, frequently asked questions, who are the providers I can see, the healthcare providers, where are they located. It even tells you if you're in Upper Hill and you need to see an ENT, it will tell you the ENTs who are around there whom you can see, and their work, time of work and all that information. We're trying to empower our members so that the same information that we have in Jubilee is the same information that our members have. And that one is not kept with the underwriter.
No, but I'll get back to that. Tony, you had something to ask.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Ogalo a question. That from the economics perspective, for us, when we look at it, is that when you have an insurance, it's able to improve access to healthcare.
Yes.
Now, when the cholera outbreak happened, medical insurance are not picking that as a risk when you go to hospital. So I would want to know what was the kind of the risk that we're analyzing, because I would expect that this is where private sector comes in the health sector, to be able to address such challenges in health sector.
Thanks, Tony. That would depend on the terms of each contract, because each contract is defined separately and priced separately. But what I can generally say, in industry practice, is that epidemics and pandemics are excluded as a risk to insurance, because their effect is widespread and they affect so many people. And we're not able to price for pandemics and epidemics in terms of, the price would be, out of this world. But there are other situations where a client would there's something called buyback. So they say, okay, pandemics are an exclusion, but I want them included in my cover. So then that negotiations happen. But at a general level, pandemics would be excluded. So, and again, it is not the insurance company to say, I think this is pandemics. No. There is a government body to declare that now we are dealing with an epidemic situation. So once that declaration is made, it's now when we take over. Before that, it is a payable event because we cannot be the judge and the bench at the same time.
Okay, and we'll get back to that in a bit. We'll get back to the conversation in a bit. After this break, we're going to be looking at some of the feedback on social media. People asking some questions about getting stranded, and some who just feel that they're not as gratified with some of the responses we are getting, and just a matter of communication, especially. And we shall get to that in a bit. But for now, we'll take a short break.
Actually, private insurances ask for NHIF to be mandatory. You must have NHIF first before they cover you. So basically, it's private insurances is for other extras that you would want to have. So it doesn't, one does not replace the other. Yeah. They coexist and it functions that way.
Okay, then we have William Wambogo saying, as important as it is, this cover has become a cash cow for many hospitals. That's for you, Mr. Chairman, where at times one is admitted for unnecessary reasons just to milk cash from insurance companies, which is the conversation we're having earlier on. You can see people still have this feeling, and I don't think, is it fair to say that it is not true or it is misguided?
What happens is, and I will respond to that, like in every industry, you might have 1 or 2 cases, or maybe 2% or 3% or 4%, where you will have such reasons. But the majority, which is almost 95%, would be you are admitted for the right reason. And as I said earlier, if you are admitted for the wrong reason, insurances will never pay. So they have their own criteria where they will look at and say, this patient was not supposed to be admitted, and they pre-authorize admissions unless it's an emergency. So before you are admitted, if you have an insurance card, it means your insurance the company that you got your insurance from will be notified, so and so is here, we need to admit him because of XYZ. And then they give pre-authorization to say, yes, you can go ahead and admit. Isn't it so?
Maybe you can tell us, how many times you get this kind of complaints yourself that, I know it's my cover, I know that, you're the one who's paying for me, but I still feel we've been played, or we've been hoodwinked by, or we've been overcharged by the hospitals?
Don't remember when we started, I said I partly agree with what Doc is saying. To the extent that, yes, I know doctors are good people and they try to look at the patient. But statistically speaking, I think we've had more than the 2% cases is referring to, where some services are offered more for financial reasons as opposed to clinical, where admissions happen, which if the patient was cash paying, they wouldn't have been admitted. So you find that you look at it, you pre-authorize, but in there now you pick up things that would have lead to over utilization. We have cases of prescriptions and admissions that cases that do not require admissions, but because the member has an insurance card, then my good doctor here would proceed and admit. It's a fight we are having every day. And I think on a global scale, if there is regulation so that these fights are reduced, and also there is guideline and protocol on treatment, then would be able to expand the uptake of insurance. Okay,
and I'll be getting back to you because it has become like the hospitals are using it as a cash cow. There's accusations of that, but there's also accusations of the insurance companies. And I'll get to that in just a bit. But I can see there's Sue's Tommy who says that with NHIF Kenya, my wife gave birth and it was perfect. Congratulations to them. And we see Brian Agre saying that his experience with AAR has been incredible and they take responsibility. We have Nicola saying if you live in this country, people are suffering in the off cover. I guess it's despite there being a cover. That's some of the sampled feedback we're going to be having for now. But we just continue the conversation, and what ordinarily would happen is that we find, like I said, people may not fully understand the insurance product sometimes. And so what happens is there's the accusation, there's the allegation, which sometimes has simply proved true, that the insurance company is not going to give me as much information, because the more empowered I become, the more I will be protective over how I handle my cover, and the less I will spend on you. True or false?
That is largely false, because what we do, and I would take you through, Dan, is that at the point of prospecting, so if you want a medical cover, especially with, I'll talk for Jubilee, because that's the one I understand, that if you walk in or we engage at the point of selling, we'll take you through the terms of the policy, we'll take you through the exclusions, we'll take you how you use your cover. And that is at the point before you even sign up, so that when you're signing up, you have all this information. And the same information is now documented and passed over to you, simplified. Again, as I said, IRA expect us to have a simplified contracts, as part of treating customer fairly, so that the understanding is the same, not that what we meant and what the client understand is different. That is at the point of sale. Then I did talk about the education awareness that we carry out, and the same process of just taking our members through what is in scope, what is out of scope, what is exclusions, because every contract, as you're aware, must have what is in scope and what it does not cover. And then now, we leave it to the hospitals, my dear friend here, to implement now the agreement.
But the unfortunate bit is that he's not telling you is that agreement is done usually with the HR. So like if you come to NTV, Nation Media might have 500 or 1,000 employees, but that discussion of what it includes, what it doesn't include, usually is given to the HR. So by the time an employee who ordinarily works here would understand what exactly that cover entails, will be maybe at the tail end, or when they go to a hospital, is when they realize my cover does not allow me to use for X, does not allow me to use for Y. So it has to be a continuous education where the members, whether there is a new employee, whether you have been there before, is educated on what benefits are there and what are the exclusion criteria. Because we have the same challenge. Patients walking in thinking that they are covered for inpatient, but unfortunately they are only covered for outpatient without realizing.
Okay.
So
I just want to jump into, to cut you short and just jump into that for a bit. Like the cases where we have the corporate covers.
Yes.
Whose responsibility is it to inform the employee of the terms of the cover? Is it yours or the HR?
It's a joint responsibility, and that is why, one, we do what we call, once the contract is signed up, terms agreed upon, we engage now directly with the users here, now the staff, the employees, through the HR, of course. So they facilitate awareness sessions where we meet with the users, the employees, the beneficiaries, and take them through the same process that HR is aware of. And two, we've gone a step further, as I explained. Now we're using technology by enabling members to have access to this information directly on phone, on the net, and So we have an application called Customer Online, where our customers log in, you get a one-time login PIN, and you're able to access all the details pertaining to the cover that you're enjoying as a staff, or as a member who has walked in and purchased a cover with Jubilee. So that would entail, your usage in terms of just tracking and monitoring your utilization, the scope of cover, what is covered and what is not covered, in a summarized version that a member would understand and not the insurance jargon.
So if I may just ask you, do you feel that then your communication as insurance firms is good?
We're trying. It's work in progress. We are trying, and it is good to the extent that we are now really going down to the users, as opposed to the policyholder, who is in this case would be the
company.
Yeah.
Not all insurances. Jubilee might be ahead of the curve in terms of their use of technology, but majority still using the old method. Jubilee actually, in essence, the truth of the matter, are trying to the point that even claims they are doing the e-claim, which reduces the cost of the paper trail and trying to cut the administrative cost that most hospitals and insurances incur.
Okay,
and that's one of the reasons why it becomes expensive for a patient who is using an insurance and a patient who is paying cash.
Okay, and you brought up a point that I want us to now move to in terms of the cost of medical, of healthcare in Kenya, yes. Because this is really where this is where the feel is. The crux of the matter is that yes. Not only the health but also the cost.
Yes.
And maybe begin with Tony. Why do you think the cost is as it is? Do you think it's too high? One, I don't want to come from the assumption of it's too high. And if it is, what do you think is the cause of it?
The first question the way I'll answer is, yeah, it's high. And that is because, firstly, government invests very little in healthcare. The global standard is around 20 to 30%. We are around 13% in the overall investment in healthcare. Now, the way to bridge that gap is work with private sector in terms of resource mobilization on how to improve healthcare. Currently, what we have, we don't have a good symbiotic kind of relationship between government and private sector in terms of addressing healthcare financing. And so we have that currently a huge number of people are uninsured, are not covered with the healthcare. As Ogalo said, he has the correct numbers, that 1.2 million are covered by private sector, and then NHIF is 6.6. Now, if you look at the NHIF itself, it's a system that was, it's designed for the middle tier. It's not designed for the ordinary person in the informal sector who can pay those premiums. Now, when you have such a system, it only accommodates a few people. So it doesn't have a base. Basically, how doctors say that the NHIF should be the base, and then the components of the private sector come on top. We don't have that base that we can cover. It acts like a pyramid scheme. That's the way it's supposed to be. So the more people are outside the insurance cover, the more they spend out-of-pocket spending on healthcare. So that percentage is calculated as 32% of Kenyans use their income in healthcare. Those are not insured. Then government comes, then private sector in the middle. So we need to find a way on how do we reduce out-of-pocket spending by the ordinary Kenyans so that they are covered by the insurance. That is the basic part that the insurance comes in.
Okay,
yeah.
And I'll ask you, do you feel that the cost of healthcare is high? And if so, how should we bring it down?
Yes, it is high. To the extent that the numbers that I mentioned and even Tony has mentioned, it's quite low in terms of the people who have the population that are medically insured. One, the thing that we can narrow down to the issues that makes the cost of healthcare high is the cost of care, and Doc will shed more light on it here. I mentioned I'm narrowing down on drugs because that is, we're passionate about that in Jubilee. 48% of our payout is drugs. And when you look at drugs, there is no standard cost for, say, amoxicillin, for example. If you go to his hospital where he presents, it has a cost. His markup is, say, X. If you go to the next hospital, which could be 100 meters away, is markup, the markup is different and the cost is now different. So that the variation on the markup on drugs varies from 40–60% depending on where you're purchasing the drugs. The import of that is that it makes the premiums to go high because the cost of healthcare is dependent on the claims projections. So if the claims are projected to be high, then of course you want to charge a premium that missed your cost of claims, which is the primary obligation with the insured and the insurer. So if that is addressed in terms of, because I know Kenyan is an importing company, we import a lot of our drugs, but the markups that the providers levy on that imported drugs is way up. that making the cost of healthcare high. The second point to me is, of course, the usage by the members. As we said, some members feel that I have insurance cover, then I got to use it within the period of insurance, which is normally 1 year. So if you have, say, an inpatient of $1 million or an outpatient of 200,000, some members feel that this 200,000 is allocated to me and I need to utilize it. So at Jubilee, we try to educate members so that there is ownership. You know, they know that this is a benefit. I need to use it when it is necessary, and it comes to me to take care of my health needs and family, and not, you know, kind of credit card to be utilized.
I know you want to respond.
No, what I want to respond on is it's high compared to what? See, when we say healthcare cost is high, compared to what? What are we comparing? To which country? To which? Based on which criteria are we saying it's high? Some of the things that could actually make, could reduce, I wouldn't say the cost is high, but I would say the things that can be done to reduce the cost is, as he stated, we literally buy everything that we use in this country, from equipment to drugs. So basically all the inputs that you will need is imported into the country. And unfortunately, a few years ago, they never used to have VAT levies, but nowadays even there is VAT. So you will find for every item that you import, which is supposed to be used in a hospital, it has a duty of almost 40-something percent, 45% to 50%. So that makes it difficult to sustain in terms of that duty has to be passed to the patient. As for the drugs, most big companies have a recommended retail price, which they usually share with hospitals, with insurances, with pharmacies. So like you will find GSK will have a recommended retail price that they will say, if it's amoxil, this is the recommended retail price, this is the distributor price, that's how usually.
And what freedom do you have to go above the price that has been recommended?
You have 100% freedom, but but this is the thing. When Jubilee puts me on their panel, because it's not everywhere that you can go with your card as a Jubilee insurance. So meaning Jubilee will decide and say, I want hospital X are the ones that are on my panel. So if you have my card, you can only go to those hospitals. So meaning they have verified and they have agreed on those prices. Those prices are not surprises. They are prices that have been agreed with the insurance so that they know this is our cost, this is what we'll be charging, this is our new price list. And that is what every hospital does every beginning of the year. That price list is what's passed to the insurance. As for the other part of the number of people that are covered, yes, the reality is no one can sustain paying out of pocket. That is...
Which is the reason insurance exists.
Yes. So the minimum a person should have is NHIF. Even if you can't afford anything else, just the minimum that you should have is NHIF, which is usually 500 shilling per family per month, and that translates to around 10 to 15 to 20 shilling per day that you need to set aside for you to get that card. So out of pocket is unsustainable anywhere in the world. There is nowhere that, even if you earn, I don't know, a salary of 500,000, if today you are told go and seek healthcare and pay from your salary, you will not be able to sustain it.
John, you had something to say?
Yeah, you was asking that what healthcare are we comparing when you're saying it's expensive? Maybe if I can answer that. When we talk about when you're mentioning about out-of-pocket spending,
yes,
it makes it expensive in the sense that if you're not insured, you have an extra cost to cater for your healthcare. In Kenya, it's around 30% of your income. So imagine somebody who earns maybe 3,000 has to spend 30,000 on healthcare. Now, what we are looking at is that Healthcare insurance, health insurance, basically, the way it works, like the Obamacare affordable healthcare. The principle behind, or the economics behind it, is that the more you cover more people, the more you reduce your cost of, you improve the health access, and then you reduce your investment in healthcare as government. So the overall view of it is that we are able to reduce down, and at the same time increase health status of people. Now, what we're having in Kenya, that's where what makes healthcare expensive.
And you know why insurances don't have many people on board? Because they target companies and corporates.
Yeah.
If you look at their business, you will find 90% or 99% are corporate, 1% are individuals. Meaning there are less people who are individually going to get insurance, and most of the time it's because the premium is either too high, or they actually stop and say you are doing what's called, is it advanced selection or moral hazard? Advanced selection. Such that you come only when you are sick. You want to take a premium, you want to pay for insurance because you have been told today, you went to your doctor and he told you have diabetes. So what happens is, I cannot sustain paying out of pocket because now I have a chronic condition. So you dash to the insurance and say, now can you cover me? So for them, they have put some measures to refuse you to come in by giving you premiums that are unreasonable. So
your doctor has given some statistics which may not necessarily be the precise one. Maybe you can tell us what is the share of corporate to individual in terms of the people who've taken covers, and
in the industry.
Why is it that there's this heavier skew, assumedly that is over 50%? Towards the corporate? Is it because of it's easier, or is it because the individuals cannot afford?
Then before I give you the stats, let me just go back to Dr. because I think that is the crux of the matter we're discussing here.
Yeah.
The cost. So if Dr. charges what he wants to charge for a condition that would ordinarily have been treated by, say, 50% of the cost, the import of that is that I would charge premium to cover the cost of that treatment. And that premium, sometimes you find it's out of the way for many of our population. So it's a vicious circle of providers charging high, then the insurers would charge premiums to meet the cost of the claims, and then now our majority of the population find that the premium is a bit high. But having said that, yes, you know, for in private insurance, big majority is corporate clients to the extent of about 80 to 20%. And it's the reasons is some of these things we're discussing, especially on cost. But at Jubilee Insurance, what our focus has been on retail. So we're targeting individuals, we're targeting families, so that they buy insurance and exclude the out-of-pocket spend. So we have products that are targeted at individuals, at families. You walk into Jubilee, or our salespeople will come to you, they take you through the product structure, and you purchase it as an individual, not necessarily as a corporate organization. But yes, the statistics are not looking good.
Now, just a quick one. There's a case where I know of personally that someone was under a corporate cover, and they then wanted to boost or to get another cover, but still under the same insurer. But when they declared that they're under this company, say it's Jubilee, so I'm under the corporate cover of Jubilee. But when I come to get an additional cover of my own, but I declare I'm under the initial cover, the person was denied. Why?
Bring them to Jubilee.
They're in Jubilee.
We have.
I was trying to shield you, but now you decided to throw the fire.
We have solutions for such, so that you can top up. So there is what the employer provides for you, which is as you're entitled to as an employee. Then on top of that, as an individual, then you can take care, like, additional cover. So we have product, our J-Care, for example, which is designed for individuals and families. You walk in not as a staff of Nation Media, but as Dan Mwangi, then would give you the cover. Similarly, For our seniors who say, you know, retire or are at advanced age, we have our J seniors also, you know, targeted at the senior members of the community, because we found out that at retirement, we've covered you, you know, you reach 55, you reach 60, then at retirement, then now you have, there is no solution. You go and now you're on your own. And out of that need, we developed a product which is again targeted at our senior members of the community, so that as you enjoy your retirement, your health issues continue to be covered the same way they were covered when you're in employment.
Exclusions, of course, very high.
Sorry?
For senior. I'm saying exclusions are very high, especially for senior, as long as you have some pre-existing conditions.
Okay.
Except whereby NHIF is the only one that does not have any exclusions on pre-existing condition. As for the providers, the prices being high, what we need to understand is literally everything other than the HR and the building, we buy from suppliers. If it's the lab reagents, if it's the drugs. So literally everything also comes to us at a cost. So what we need to do is look at the cost and then add a markup so that you are able to continue and sustain.
So what I want to combine this, like a combined question for the two of you. He said that, you know, there's, by the time you put him on your panel, when you put his hospital on your panel, and there's a recommended price by the, say, GSK, like you said, or whichever other drug manufacturer, do you counter check the prices to ensure that they're not, or do you have, is it because it's his own business, you don't have control over how he prices his medicine?
At the contracting stage, of course, part of the validation checks and discussions that we have, of course, is the pricing structure that, you know, our members would be levied. So would go through that. But then you realize that in this country, the healthcare providers are more powerful than the payers.
How so?
No.
So that if my members would say, I want to go to Metropolitan, if Metropolitan is not in your panel, then I'm not signing up with you. So the members, and again, it's part of that education, have made the healthcare providers more powerful than the payers. So that if I don't have Metropolitan in my panel because I don't agree with their pricing, then the pressure from my members would be immense. So sometimes you find that you just have a middle ground of some sort, but not what as me as a payer would want to dictate.
So ultimately, they do have quite some leeway to eventually mark up, say, like the price of drugs beyond what would be, you know, reasonable.
He said it's 100%.
No. The markup is usually what is the recommended price. Actually, it's the insurances that have more power than anyone else. Because before I joined, we combined Metropolitan and London. There are certain insurance companies that were never on our panel. Reason being, they say we have enough providers. We are not interested. So despite companies saying, or their clients saying, I want to be seen in that facility, it's never that easy, as he puts it. Usually, it's the insurances and the providers already know what are the prices, and those are things that they have agreed on. Despite that, they still have discounts that they ask for. After the bill, there is a 5%, 10%, 20% discounts after the pricing has been agreed. So I would say, and they have the ability to decline certain procedures and claims when they feel that it's out of the price.
Okay.
Which they can easily do it and say, for this one, the price is too high, we are not going to pay. You have overcharged us here, you have overcharged us. And that's what usually happens. Claims are being sent left, right, center. Rarely would you get where they will, everything that you bill, they will accept and say, yes, you have the power, our clients have given you the power, you bill us, we will pay you. It's never that way.
Can I give you an example?
Please do.
In South Africa, for example, through the medical aid schemes, prices for treatment is regulated. So that if a member comes to Metropolitan or go to Nairobi Hospital, same condition, it would be the same price. That has left the insurance companies fighting on service as opposed to fighting on premiums. So that there's strong regulation about, this whole discussion about markups and what you'd charge. And the treatment protocol is well defined and the cost applied. So that now insurance companies are competing on service and not price. But in Kenya, we have a situation where amongst ourselves, we are fighting on price, and then we have this big group of providers who have more power than the payer.
So are we saying that hospitals have cartel-like behavior?
Well, not cartel. Call it practice. Their practice has been.
I think you're trying to be politically correct. And there have been accusations, Daktari, that some of your members, have got cartel-like behaviors where they try to control those prices and they'll make sure they keep it high. So if I choose to move from hospital X to Y, because they've agreed on that high level of pricing, that I resigned to fate and just have to pay the high price.
No. You see, what he's talking about is costing that has been done in South Africa. Actually, the healthcare cost is times 10 what we pay locally. If you compare a normal patient who walks into a hospital here and you compare a patient who walks into a private hospital in South Africa. Despite that, the unfortunate bit in this country is no one has ever done costing of healthcare. So what happens is Jubilee or all other insurances, so everyone feels I should pay this is too high. But the question is, how do you decide this is too high? And who decides this is too high? No one has ever done costing. They just decide and say this is too high because you are going beyond our premium, and because our premiums are limited.
So you've got your free space to play.
No.
And you're playing within it.
And that's why you will find in the same Nairobi, different hospitals with different prices. So that you will have one, it's the same thing that I was talking about. There's an iPhone price, there's an Oppo price, and you will get the same services that you would want. But what happens, patients' preference will always be the big hospitals. Rarely would you find patients saying, especially the people with cards. You see, if you are a cash payer, you will always say, where am I getting the same service? And you will realize it's the same doctors. The same doctor who is in Aga Khan or in a big hospital or in Kenyatta is the same one who might be treating you in another smaller facility that you as an individual would think this is a small facility. So basically, and he's prescribing the same GSK drug. So the extra sometimes you end up paying for are the rooms, the ambience, those other things. And that's how you end up paying a little bit higher than you should have paid normally.
Okay, I want to get to Tony.
What Dr. is saying is one of the issues that we have been concerned about how our healthcare is being structured. That patients mostly prefer hospitalization. You attend, so long as you have a card, the first point that you go is a hospital. So the effect of that is all the funds in healthcare end up in these hospitals. At the end of the day, we are collapsing the primary healthcare. Now, the primary healthcare is the main base to improve your health services. Now, I don't know, I will want to hear his response about that, because that's where India ended up where it is today. It has a collapsed primary healthcare. That primary healthcare is where you have access to a small facility, to a clinic, you attended quickly. So what we are having right now is everyone who has a health insurance turn up in a hospital, even if it's flu, even if it's anything. So they feel that's the appropriate way.
So, sorry, just to get straight, so you're saying what would be the ideal case?
The ideal case is that we need to make policies that about hospitalization, So, for them, it's money that is coming. So they will always admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's an issue, that we end up in the day, all the money about healthcare, from health insurance and all that, end up in hospitals rather than expanded facilities around. So we are able to...
Or the smaller dispensaries and the like.
Yes.
But you see, that's why most big hospitals or hospitals will have clinics in the periphery, so that you don't come and clog the main hospitals.
But isn't that maybe just more of a logistical thing, because the same company?
No, but you see, you cannot be admitted in those clinics. So all you need is, if you have a cough, they will treat you so that you go home, so that you leave the main hospital for patients who might need admissions and such, especially in the outpatient department. But health, if you look at broadly, even the primary health care that we are talking about, there are many other things that interact with it. Sanitation is one of them. We are talking about cholera a few minutes earlier. So you see, there's water, there's nutrition, there's sanitation. Some of these things are with the county government, with the national government, that need to be preventative aspects, that you need, your environment is conducive enough for you to live healthily, rather than you end up going up all the time to a hospital. So the primary health care needs to be catered for, whereby you have clean water running the taps, you have good sanitation, waste disposal. So those things need to be addressed as part of the welfare for the whole country and as part of for the health industry. So that also needs to be part of the conversation, not just curative. You know, this going to the hospital is usually treatment, just treatment. Treatment alone will not work.
Okay. I think we've gotten the point. I just want to now, because we need to hand over to sports and entertainment, I just want to do some closing remarks. And I would like you, Tony, to just tell us what policy shifts need to be put in place just to make sure that we have a more friendly, you know, medical healthcare space, as opposed to what we have right now, where we are seeing people, you know, people getting stranded or people dying unnecessarily, may put it that way.
Yeah, the first thing is what Dr. said. We need to emphasize more of the preventive aspect of it about healthcare. The second will be to restructure the NHIF again. What we have right now, it's a middle tier one. We need to find a subsidized program that people can afford. So we build a base of 222 million households who are left out. So that builds a base for private sector to come and improve access. So when the moment you have more coverage of healthcare, you're able to reduce your health status of people and improve more financing in your sector.
Okay, quickly, do you feel that you guys are also like banks, where people are accusing banks of making too much money at the expense of Mwananchi?
Dan, you'd be shocked that in medical insurance, we do not make money. If you look at the statistics from our regulator, the industry has always been operating on underwriting losses year on year. Partly because of, you know, the pricing structure we're talking about, and also, you know, some of it is operational, which of course we are addressing, you know, as an industry. But the major factor, and you know, I repeat it in this forum, is that we have, the payers have been sidelined with the service providers who have become more powerful, charging what they want, and in the process, you know, stifling the growth of health insurance. If we have regulation and, you know, that also just guide what the pricing structure would be, that would help, you know, penetration of health insurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dr. in closing, 30 seconds actually.
For me, it will be to look at the current duties and VATs that have been introduced, because we import literally everything from equipment to drugs. If they can be waived back or returned to where it was zero rated, then that way we'll have a reduced cost in terms of our inputs. And that is what we can transfer to the patients. So hopefully we will have a more people taking up insurances, including NHIF, and hopefully it will be made mandatory.
Okay, thank you very much. I could see the battle between the hospitals and the insurers across this show. But the thing that's good to note is that someone between you two, if not both of you, are causing us to pay high, to have a very costly experience at our hospitals. And that needs to change. And that's why Tony was saying some policy changes need to move, because it has become the culture. So now everyone is coming to you as opposed to going to the smaller clinics, you know, and so the healthcare system is not balanced. So somewhere between you two, as you make your money, remember that we have Wananchi who are struggling. Thank you very much, Dr. Abdi Mohammed, the chairman of the Kenya Association of Private Hospitals, as well as the Chief Operations Officer at Metropolitan Hospital. Thank you for joining us and speaking to us, as well as Japheth Ogalo, the Head of Business Development for Medical at Jubilee Insurance. And we have Tony Watima, economist and columnist, who's been gracious enough to come and join us and give us some policy conversation on that.